Okay, hi Annie. It's my great pleasure to talk to you today about the stone circles in Cornwall. And when I first met you many, many years ago, I met you as a teacher, and I did training with you, ceremonial work for women. But you generally are well known in the UK here. As a workshop leader who works in shamanic and ceremonial ways, as somebody who runs vision quests, who does wilderness work, rites of passage, and is also now, of course, an elder, much revered in the shamanic community here. And so it's my great pleasure to have a chat with you today about these circles in Cornwall. So as you know, we are recording this for Unity Earth Week, which is an international event. And we felt that you were the ideal person to talk about the sacred sites here in the UK and especially in West Cornwall. So would you like to say something about yourself? Just a bit about your background, who you are, what you do.
Hey, Christian. Well, first of all, thank you so very much for inviting me. Last we've got here together. Who am I? I've been working for, yes, decades now. But my mother comes from the very southwest of Cornwall. She was born on a farm in a village called Zena. And so I feel like my root is deeply within this land. Now, when you talk about Cornwall, I'm talking very specifically about the very southwest of Cornwall, a part that is called West Penwith. And if you look at a map of Britain and you go down to that boot on the right-hand side, you then go down to the toe, and at the sort of where the toe meets the rest of the foot is very narrow. And it used to be, it is about, I don't know, about 3 miles wide. It used to be just a marsh. It was very difficult to cross, and it was only in Victorian times they finally built a causeway. So So what happened there a long, long time ago, maybe 4,000 years ago, is still very much there for us to experience and to feel. So in my family's fields, the hedges are Bronze Age, and the stone circles are late Neolithic and Bronze Age. That means they're, very, very old. And in a way that, because they're small, they're not like Stonehenge or Avebury. The stones maybe come up to your waist, maybe a little higher. They've been left alone. So the energy they hold is still there. And so I have loved them and done what I can with them, starting in a place of deep ignorance for really as long as I can remember.
Right. So already before you started the work you do now, or after you began to do the work you do now?
I guess I visited them, as a child.
Right.
Then it was quite interesting because I was training in psychology down in Cornwall. I was living in Cornwall, wondering how my life was going to turn out. And I was training in psychology, and this guy called Arnold Kaiserling, who was the president of the European Association of Humanistic Psychology, came to run a weekend for us. And he spent the entire weekend talking about Native American medicine wheel teachings and how they related to European grammar and Greek mathematics and the I Ching and every system that you can imagine. And then he said, I'm apprenticed to this man, Jaime Storm, and I'm going to send him to Cornwall because he would love to see your stone circles down here. And
that's amazing.
Yes, and a few weeks later he came, and for me, the Native American teachings, I felt when I first heard of them, I felt, now I've come home. That's where I belong. So the two have been intimately connected all the way through my journey.
Yeah. And so, of course, if you look at the North American teachings, and part of it is, of course, the medicine wheel, which is also, in a way, stone circles. So you have an incredibly deep connection, don't you, to the stones in Cornwall and the circles in West Cornwall, that tip. When you're working with the circles, so when you are in the circle, do you tune in quite easily? Do they feel like they are part of your roots?
The thing is that I love granite. I moved to Bath some time ago, and it was very difficult for me because it's a place full of limestone. And granite is my stone, and it's full of crystals and feldspar, and it's just a rock that I talk to. When I started off, I didn't know what I was doing. There were no teachers. I just used to visit the circles over and over again, and I thought, these stones have been communicating with humans for a long time, so maybe it's easier to communicate with these rocks than all the rocks lying around elsewhere. And so I used to just arrive, give offerings, go around, put my hand on them, see what it felt like. Sometimes we slept there on misty nights. And then later on, I started doing ceremony there. But I have to say that I've learned what I've learned from the stones themselves, from the place itself, with a little bit more. So, for instance, you talk about us going to Boscarnoon, and I was going to talk about the Merry Maidens, and I took a group to the Merry Maidens, and it was at Imbolc, the time, when the spring is trying to come in, and Bridget Bride, with all her poetry and her beauty, is trying to arrive, and the snowdrops are here, but basically it's still pretty cold and dark and wintry. So we went up onto the moors, up onto a hill above Zena, and collected crooked bits of old dead gorse and things like that. And we came back and we made a great Cailleach figure, the old woman of winter. And then we went down to this fertile river valley at Lamorna, and we collected stuff. We made a form for Bridie, and then we took them up to the Merry Maidens to do their dance, to do their movement, to see what would happen. And what did happen? Hail came out of a clear sky and fell all over us. And we felt it was the old woman saying, I'm not finished here this year. I have more to do. Don't think you can banish me that quickly.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Because that's how they speak, isn't it? You certainly, once you tuned in, you can hear the messages. I remember working with you at the Merry Maidens when I did that training with you. And I remember we had to go up. You ordered us up to the Merry Maidens. Before you started, you ordered. There's no doubt. No, what you basically said is go up and greet the guardians. And when you greet the guardians, I will never forget that, off the stone circle. That was the first thing I learned. You actually greet and you make yourself known. And you ask permission if you can enter. I learned that from you that first weekend. And then I remember putting my hands there, the one and the other. I said, I think they were too far away from each other. And you also had said, as far as I remember, you will begin to set your intent for the weekend. And it was just as if it was suddenly coming to me, my intent for the weekend. And I was fairly new to this work, you know. So I just thought, okay, so this is obviously the intent. And as the weekend progressed and came to a close, all the things fell into place with the intent I had set at the Merry Maiden, and it was magical. So just to throw that into the equation, my memory of the Merry Maiden. So you work with the Merry Maiden a lot, but do you also work with other circles? Tell us a bit just about stories, things you know about the circles.
Recently, I've worked a lot with the Nine Maidens because I've been over that side. I mean, I'm mostly talking about because I mostly know circles in Penwith, but actually, if you drive down to Cornwall on the motorway, there is a circle about 3 minutes drive from the motorway, which you cannot see from the motorway, although you can see the motorway because the circle's hidden in the land. And if I can, every time I go in, I drive off and go there, and I thank the stones and I thank the energies for holding the place the way that they do. And I ask for that things will go well for me down there. And then when I leave, I go there again and I thank them for all that has come and pray that they will continue to hold the place in a good way. I return with that. Boscarnoon, I tell a story which is, oh yes, it's not my thing, but I was there. And it's many decades ago, this man called Sir George Trevelyan came and brought a group of people to Boscarnoon, and he brought a seer. And he told this beautiful story I never forgot. That this is how they used to work that circle a long time ago. The people would come from every direction. Many, many people would come until they were surrounding the circle in rows and rows and rows going back. Inside the circle were the priests, and they would work with the energies, building them and building them. And meanwhile, they put a dome, like a rainbow dome, holding the energy in over the circle. And they worked and they worked and they worked, building up the power, building up the power, building up the power, until it could take no more. And then they took up their great horns and they blew on their horns, and the dome was shattered, and everything they had been built up was sent out around the land.
Wow.
This somewhere, it helps me when I'm thinking, what can I do? Or does this really work? Or what's going on? And I realize, I mean, my understanding is that stones hold memory. They're the old memory holders from the beginning, really. So they hold that memory. They hold all the memories of all of us stumbling humans who've come along and tried to help in some way. And at the moment, all we're trying to do is repair our relationship with the natural world. So this. So this, I can now move from there to this last weekend, which is the weekend when these grand leaders of the world leaders turned up in Little Penwith, which was really funny. And I thought, what can we do? What can we do? So maybe it'll make no difference they're meeting now, but maybe we can send a little energy to them that could soften their hearts and a little bit get them to remember that they too belong to this earth. So what we did on the Thursday night, the first night when they'd arrived, and we're probably having a grand dinner, but we didn't go out till midnight or so, and we didn't get home till 6:30. We went round all the circles in Penwith, and we started with the Nine Maidens, Boskednan, which is a beautiful circle high up on the moors, and it looks to a little headland that's rising up, and beyond that headland on each side are the ocean. And it feels like you could run from the circle to that headland and it would take off to the stars. And somewhere it really connecting with the stars. And it has a wide range of, you can see all the way around you, so that you're feeling your way out to the other circles, to the other fugus, to the quoits, to all the other sacred sites around in that area. So we started there, and we were a bit purist. We thought we cannot go and light up this grid with petrochemicals. So therefore, we can't use tea lights. We had jam jars. So this friend went to the tip and got 80 jam jars and cleaned them all up. And then we got vegetable oil. And then he bought these little wicks, clever little wicks from France. So each circle we came to, we had to collect 19 or 20 and prepare them all and then light them in the dark in the wind. It was but we did it. So each circle up at Boskednon was lit up in a strong wind. And we had to drive up to this mine Ding Dong up a terrible rocky path and then walk in and hope that we'd see them in the dark. And then we went back and we went on to Tregasil, which is also high up on the hills. And it's near to a rocky outcrop called Khan Kanijak. And the wind calls through that rocky outcrop. It's a natural outcrop and makes strange sounds. And when people became more Christianized, they got quite frightened by those sounds. They called it the Devil's Khan. But really, it's a place where the wind is really singing the stories of the earth through the rocks for us to hear. So at Tregasil again, we did our process, and I had to go, you had to sort of, once you've lit out one, you could just about see the next stone, and after that, the next, and so on around. And as that circle lit up, I tell you, it grew and it grew and it grew, and it got deeper and more immense till it was this huge, extraordinary, immense space lit up on the edges by these little lights. It was really grand. And at each place we made prayers asking that these circles would connect with one another, and that perhaps the grid that they held around that land would become a little stronger and vibrate a little stronger, so that everyone who's walking that land, including those grand heads of state, would pick that vibration up through their feet, or maybe through their dreaming while they were asleep, so that it would do whatever it could do. And from there, we went to Boscanun, the elder tree on the downs is what Boscanun means. The elder tree being one of the witch trees, the old wisdom trees. And you can easily take the pith out and make a little flute from its wood. And there again, by now, it was faint. You know, the nights are very short at this time of the year. So you can faintly see them in the mist. And that circle said to us, that was the one that I told you about with all the people coming. And we arrived there, and I didn't remember that story, but each one, you're right, we just had to wait and ask permission and see if they would let us come in. And when we were waiting and asking permission, it said, well, where is everyone? Like, 2 of you? That's not much good, but that was all we could do, the 2 of us. So they really wanted more people. It's still a place that welcomes a lot of people. So we lit that whole circle, and there's a grand stone in the middle. We put a light under there. And then we went finally to the Merry Maidens, the Dawn's Mane, the dance of the dancing stones, sacred stones. That's what that really means. I mean, there's a story that says, a wedding party went up there and danced, and they danced too late. They danced after midnight on a Saturday. So they were dancing on a Sunday, and the Cornish at one time were Methodists. They were very, very strict about Sunday being a serious time. So one of the stories is that the dancers were all turned into stone, but actually Dawn's Mane is Cornish, and it actually means sacred stones, the dancing stones, the stones full of light, the stones full of light, those stones that are alive and already in movement. So that was our last one. So I had to dance around them. I was fairly tired, but never mind, I had to do it and sing to them. And now it was a bit lighter, so I could see where I was going and not trip over brambles, which was, of course, helpful. Boscanun was full of rabbit holes.
Yeah.
So in the end, we managed to light the whole matrix.
Wow.
So, and each time when we left, we looked back and there they were. All the lights were there. So we did what we could. And I feel a lot with, so I love those circles so much. But also I feel with this work, I can't say that I'm a specialist. I can't even say that I know what I'm doing. All I can say is that I love them. And I try to respond, and I try to respect them, and I try to visit them as often as I can and take offerings and make prayers, and just to keeping alive that connection between humans and rocks, so that we might learn from them and we might hear from them. Because I'm always telling people when I'm sending them out on Vision Quest, never mind your dream of life. What dream of life does Earth have for you?
Yeah.
What is it? How could you fulfill your destiny? What might your destiny be? It might not be at all what you wanted. And what were we talking about? We were talking about the women. There's an old Native American story called The Woman Who Fell Through the Sky. And it starts off, and it's a creation story about how the earth is made. And it starts off, this girl, you know, she's at sort of the age when she's into finding a relationship. And she has a dream. And in the dream, her father says she should go and marry this old magician. And she tells her mother in the morning, her father has already died. And her mother says, no way, Jose, don't do that. He's a cruel man. You'll have a miserable life. But she did it anyway. And you could say that maybe it wasn't through her father and through her dream. The earth told her destiny. And yes, he was a cruel man. And yes, she was thrown out of this life into another dimension. But she fulfilled her destiny, which was to enable our earth that we live on to come into being. And sometimes our destiny may not be at all what we want for our lives, but surely it's the grandest path to follow if we could only find it. So going to places like those stone circles allows us to start remembering and strengthening our connection and finding a way back into a relationship with the earth and the stars and the whole of creation. And then starting to resonate with that and stumbling along and making mistakes all along the way. That is fine. We can only do, as this guy, David Smart Knight, and kept saying to me, we can only do what we can do. But at least if we do what we can do, I would add, at least we've done that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, you know, it's like not being precious, not being an expert, not telling anyone this is how it is, because we actually don't know. And my understanding of moving into sacred realms is that and I've done it a lot, what do I know? Maybe it was but when I've worked with groups of people, when we've worked as a group, is that everybody we work together, we do something together, and everybody's experience is different.
Yeah.
So there is no right way, probably, to approach those circles, except with respect and love and gratitude and waiting and having our ears and all our senses open, so that we might receive, instead of always, well, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this and, it's all going to work like this. Now I'll come and I'll ask if I can even come in. Sometimes I only go around the outside. I never walk in when I visit, because it doesn't feel, it's not the day.
Yeah. I'm fascinated because firstly, of course, it resonates with me, but also I can feel in a way the incredible love you have for those stones. And I feel when we come from that love and respect, realizing there's something bigger and older than we are at work, I feel we can trust whatever we sense, hear, feel, experience, see is kind of important for whatever reason we're going into those stones. And sometimes when you just said that you lit up the grid in a way, I often feel doing my best with a clear intent and with the love and respect this deserves, and the rest I need to leave up to what? Shall we call it the universe? I don't know. But to maybe energies and powers which know more than I do. As you said before, with the idea of following our destiny rather than our wants. And it's the finding that, and for that we have to listen maybe and to intuit and maybe to hear and see without getting in the way all the time.
And isn't that difficult, as we know, isn't that?
Oh God, yeah, of course, because of course we are taught in a completely different way, aren't we? We spend our lives in a way to build ourselves up, and that's needed as well. But then to get out of the way and to tune into is another learning process again. So when we look at stone circles, I mean, most of the things you have already said, which I'm asking you, but if you would have to explain in a way to somebody who knows very little or has never seen these circles, the powers they hold, the memory, you said the stone holds memory. And you said already that people in our ancestors in a way, or especially your ancestors, came to the stones for different reasons. Can you have you got any idea how they used the stones, what they did in different circles?
You see, in Penwith, there's been no research. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, I would imagine, what would I imagine? I would imagine that those people lived more connected to the seasons because that was their way of life. They couldn't fly in some vegetables if the season was bad. They couldn't fly in some meat from somewhere else if there were no animals around. They just had to find their subsistence where they lived. So they were much more aware and more noticing of how the seasons turned and what was coming in, and if the spring was slow, or if the summer was too hot, or if the winter was mild, or whatever it was. They would be noticing all that. But they would be constantly, I mean, I think the belief was that they understood that we are not separate from the circle of life. So somewhere what we do is also important. There's that wonderful book, isn't there, by the woman Robin Wall Kimmerer, called Braiding Sweetgrass.
Yeah.
Her experiment with sweetgrass, and she discovered that sweetgrass, which is a wild plant, grew most well when it was picked by humans and less well when it was left alone. And I think the lesson from that is really important, that actually we have a part to play.
Yeah.
So we make sacred places because then we're building not only the memories into the stones, but also into ourselves. So it's rather like, I remember being told years and years ago in church, a man said, you know, we use incense. So when you smell that incense, you're remembering the holy. But when you hear the songs and the organ, you're remembering the holy. Not that he said the holy, he probably said Jesus Christ or whatever exclusive way that he went. But it's the same thing. If we set up a place and then we go there and we only, we keep it sacred.
Yeah.
And when we go in there, we remember, we also remember, and we drop into another space in ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we go back out and we fight and we laugh and we get our food and we fall down a hole and whatever else we do. But every time we go back there, we only have to arrive. And after a while, we remember and we sink into something. And to move far away from Cornwall to Avebury, I never go to Avebury really unless I can walk in through the avenue. And if you get used to it, you can feel you're dropping in layers as you walk in. Those stone circles in Penwith are more simple, but generally, like you said, you reminded me of the two guardians. And to me, the one closest to them is like a great owl woman, a great elder, watching over all the women who might go there and dance. And at Boscarnoon, there's a rock that you go and sit on, and you look, you can see the circle, and you ask permission there, and then you see if you can go in. And at the Merry Maidens, there's a rock at the edge of the field, at two rocks. You go and ask permission there. And actually, but one has to learn all that. And to begin with, one does what one can. But those circles will teach us. It doesn't matter really what specific ceremony they were for. It's understanding. They will teach us how to deepen ourselves, how to remember the mysterious in life, how to get in touch with the deeper purposes of life and ourselves. And they will give us rest, and they will give us succor, and they will give us healing just through where they are. And I just want to say that thing that I'm now leaving that, if you don't mind, the thing that, you know, that lighting the grid is like, first of all, let's look at the line of it. The G7, for some reason unknown to me, decided to have their meeting in my part of Britain, in Carbis Bay. And then this friend went out onto the land and said, what can I do? What can I do to, and he was told the children's fire. So actually we lit a fire near San Creed, which you could say is the heart center of Penwith. And we held it all the time that those ones were there, to remind them that really it would be essential that any decision they make takes into account the needs of the children for the next 7 generations, not just humans, but all. Now, from that, I was thinking about that, and what came to me, it just came. We need to light the circles. We need to light that grid. So I didn't think of it. I had never imagined such a thing before. But you see how one thing leads to another. And if you allow yourself to be a little open and a little dreamy, then things will come in. And then that's the way maybe that they can communicate with us. But it's like you really have to go and trust your body. Trust your being, trust your dreaming self, all those bits that we don't use very much, and trust that the circles are still benign to us, and they'll be quite happy to teach us. And they will teach different people in different ways. You just have to keep going with humility and say, please tell me what to do. Please help me open up. You know, I'm in this crazy culture. So when I open up, I feel crazy. When I'm in the culture, I feel crazy. So I walk from one craziness to another. Please help me find ways to strengthen my inner being and my connection with the mysterious so that I can find my destiny and play my part. And those stone circles do it for me, you know, and each person starts off, has a beginning place, and it may be where they're born, and it may not be there at all. It may be far away where their family were rooted for a long time. Where also, wherever you are, you can connect with the land, but it may take some years of asking before the land opens up its beauty and its piety. There's something also around patience. Those stone circles make it a little easier. A lot easier.
I mean, it sounds to me, it's incredible. There's nothing I can say because it's this living relationship.
Exactly.
It's that cyclic living relationship.
Exactly.
And in a way, what you described is that it just came to you when you, after the children's fire, that it would be good to light the grid, to really go out to the circles and in a way taking the fire there as well, no? We did yes. Take that is what I call a kind of a living relationship with the mystery, isn't it? Because it doesn't need an explanation. It is just you go into a field of the sacred, like you did with the children fire, and the other sacred actions, if there are any to be done, they just come to you.
Yes.
And then just trusting in a way that if you do it with a good intent, it will be all good. It is absolutely right to do that.
Yeah, and then, you know, you have to put the energy out. Like I drove to Cornwall, we lit the children's fire. It's very difficult to light it, as you know. It's no business, etc., etc. So then suddenly I'd had this vision. I mean, I'd just seen it. Let's not be grandiose. I'd just seen it. And I'd said it to a few people. And then this guy said, well, I'm going out tonight. And I said, oh, I'm exhausted. I don't think tonight's the night. I don't think this fire is strong enough yet. So he went away and I just sat with the fire, which finally did light. And then he came back at, you know, after midnight and said, are you coming? And I, you know, I'm not that young and I'd had this long day, but something said, yes, now you go. And so I went and we didn't come home till 6:30, 7 in the morning. So we were walking the moors all night because that's what was asked of us. And and then I know that when you're called, so the timing of it, nothing is up to you really. And you have to be open to how it unfolds. You have a dream and then the thing slowly, and you think, yeah, we need to collect in practicalities. I did put my Wellington boots on. but also you have to be ready to follow. And generally you maybe make a plan and generally your plan isn't quite how it works out. And that's very important. So when those stones call, you go.
Yeah, you
And then
follow
when it
through.
starts, you don't say, well, I'm tired now. You just continue. There was one point where, you know, around at 4 in the morning, when everything drops, and I thought, I'm not sure. I'm feeling really tired. But I just walked on and we walked through it, you know, stone, the next stone. I don't know where I was at that point. And then it went. And it's like that. You have to give back and you have to respond. And you have to understand that human clocks are actually, you know, I know the sun measures time for us each day as he walks across the sky. And so, and we've now measured it down again into these little segments, but really we know that time is just a bit of figment of our imagination. And outside that, it's endless, like what happened at Tregesil. Showed me the depth of it all. And that there's, you know, and then I had to come back to walking away. So you have to be able to open up to the depth and the vastness. Then come back to now I've got to put one foot in front of the other, not trip over a rock. Managing to hold those different things at the same time. So when you go to a stone circle, you're noticing who else is there. You're very careful when if you put stuff around it, you take it all away. So it's clear. The energy is to itself for the next people. So you are being practical. You're allowing that expansion which they will give you. So that you keep learning to hold the two. What an amazing thing. The Shida and the Hokshida. That's how I was taught it, those words. The Shida is the me, and the Hokshida is the me that's part of the all the everything. And they will, so maybe I'll say they're gateways. This time, they're gateways for us into the sublime, into the mysterious.
Annie, we were talking before we started recording, and you said something quite interesting. You said they are destroying the churches. And of course, we both know that our biggest, most famous stone circle is at the moment also under threat through an infrastructure project of this government. But I wanted to maybe go there more generally and just explore a bit with you and get your insight and intuition and that deep knowing you have about what is actually happened with a kind of destruction of the sacred, that our world pays less and less attention. Well, not that we can destroy the sacred because it's there anyway, but that dishonoring, that disregard, that diminishing of the energies, and that applies to stone circles, I think, as well. Even, and that is the positive, there is also now a big movement worldwide for these sacred sites. So do you feel you want to say a bit about that?
I'm thinking of David Abram, and I haven't got quite his words. He talks about how we're seduced, but there's a stronger word, but I can't think of it, by our own magic. So in this culture, we're so entranced, is a better word, by our own inventions, our music, artificial intelligence. I mean, it is extraordinary that we forget everything else. And forgetting everything else, we actually forget most of our physicality, our other senses. And that's one thing. And another thing that I've done a lot of work with young people, taking them onto the land. And I'm always told, you can't do anything religious. They call it all religious. And so I was invited once to go and work with young men who were about to come out of orphanages in Romania. And one of the things I was going to do was ask, would I put them out in the land for the night? And then the charity got cold feet and thought, oh my God, they'll think you're sort of pagans, and say something happened to them. Pagans kill boys in some frightful devilish rite. Could you bring a priest with you? He said. We could just sit and read the newspaper. But so there are many ways in which we have cut ourselves off from an honoring of the whole of life because we daren't mention the word sacred, holy, religious. And the sad thing is, when I take kids out onto the land, the sacred doesn't exist in their vocabulary anymore. They don't have a big, and I may have been brought up a Christian and I may have rebelled against Christianity for all sorts of reasons, partly because I'm a woman, whatever, that doesn't matter. But at least I understood that spirit was part of life. And then I went exploring. I looked for the spiritual because it named something that was in me. And now that naming isn't really there. But even when people not only don't understand it, they don't honor what is there. So if we go back to sacred sites, we go back to Stonehenge, and first of all, everyone wanted a tunnel made so that the cars would be kept away. And so finally, after 20 years or something, they design a tunnel that is just totally disturbing to the sacred site because the designers don't have a clue, it seems, what is sacred and how to honor it. It makes a huge difference. And I'm very sad. I live in Bath now, and we have this beautiful great abbey, which is, you go in and the stone is reaching up like great beech trees in a forest. And I'm sure that's how they meant it to be. But it's no longer very holy inside, because actually more time is given over to the tourists than is given over to prayer. More time is spent with people going in, not doing anything terrible, but not building up the energy that you need, that humans, because remember we're part of it all, need to build up for this thing really to operate. And I was in Morocco not that many years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and we were in some market and everyone was rattling on and chatting, and there was some radio on with music, blah, 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 blah. And the Muezzin called out, because they call out, I think, 3 times a day, and everything stopped for 2 or 3 minutes, and the music was gone, everyone was silent, and we all remembered the holy. And I thought, whoa. And then it all started up again, but we were constantly remembering. So what can we do for our sacred places is to go in, and people are embarrassed about praying, and are embarrassed about talking about the holy, but don't be embarrassed. And I'm sure that 99% of the people that we're talking to here are not at all embarrassed. But it's like, don't think you have to do it in the right way. It's just going in and honoring. If we keep going in and honoring those holy places, then energetically that memory will be there. When the next humans come in, they'll feel it, and it'll be easier for us. And slowly, it's like we're building up that rainbow dome. Do you remember over Boston?
Yes, I remember it well. It came to my mind right now.
Yeah. And we're building it up. And maybe we'll get to a point where there's so much energy has been built up again, that those circles, my matrix thing was just a little beginning, will really be able to send out energy over the whole land, and over the ocean, whatever they used to do. But it's like those little steps. And as you and I talked about, it's being prepared. How did you put it? To persevere.
Yeah.
So when you don't feel like doing it anyway. When you go to the stone circle, you've got friends and you think, God, they're going to think I'm an idiot. You do it anyway and be an idiot. It doesn't matter. But keep doing it so that, because it's the reciprocity. If I go to those circles because there's been reciprocity, there's been a connection between them and us, the memory holders, and us young ones, us little brothers and very young sisters. And we can regain if we just start simply with humility and hold certain places. It's like, you know, the kitchen is where I cook. So cooking is what I think of when I walk into the kitchen. The bedroom is where I sleep. The stone circle or the coit or wherever, or the church or the mosque is where I go to remember great mysteriousness of life. And so keep doing that, please. And they will start blossoming and flourishing and fruiting all over again in a grand way. And those little circles in Penwith will become so strong that people will be called from all over, or maybe they won't, but they will be affected by, I can see it. They'll be like, you know, like those great satellite dishes. They will be doing again what they were built to do. They don't even really need to know exactly what that is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because this is part of the great mystery, but we are acknowledging it now, and we're working with it.
Yeah.
And we are with it. We are there with it.
Yeah.
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 Ani Spencer, as always, it is amazing to talk to you. And I so wish we could show a film of you in action, but I also know, and that is also one of the beauties about ceremonial work, it doesn't get filmed. It is a work which is sacred and in the moment. And I'm really grateful that you spoke to us, because even if you don't quite admit it, I think for me and for many here in the UK, you are the person who has been and still is working with those circles in a way which comes so deeply from the heart and is so connected and is so connected and open to Earth as well as the wider universe, that it is just an honor to hear you talk about that. So thank you very much.